Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Ed Bogish. I'm the Executive Director of Syracuse COE, and folks who know me and have been to our R&T forums before would know that I generally don't stand behind the podium, but we're doing something new today in our R&T forums in our webinar. Over the last year or so, when we've done webinars, we've webcast audio and the slides, and today we're webcasting audio and slides and simultaneous video. The video is coming from that camera and it's pointing at this spot, so Ian's going to be tethered too, unless he you have permission to wander over here. So again, I'm Ed Bogish. I'm the Executive Director of Syracuse COE. We're New York State's Center of Excellence in Environmental and Energy Systems, and it's our pleasure and thrill to welcome you to this monthly research and technology forum, which is going to be delivered by our dear friend Ian Shapiro. This is our holiday present to our community, that Ian is a treasure of the New York State building science and engineering community, and for him to offer to do this presentation gives us great joy. And so I think Ian is probably a person who doesn't need an introduction in this community, but I can't resist giving one, and I promise I'll make it be short. I brought 3 books to hold up as props. So the first is this wonderful book, Small is Beautiful, by E.F. Schumacher. Wonder how many people may have read this. Ian read it, and it changed his life. So the subtitle of Small is Beautiful is Economics as If People Mattered. And when Ian read this, he had a vision of starting an engineering firm, which he called Taitem. And if you know the backstory on Taitem, Taitem is an acronym, Technology as If the Earth Mattered. And it came from Ian reading this book and imagining that technology as if the earth mattered would be his engineering practice. And then 2 other books. This book, Green Building Illustrated, it's an amazingly wonderful book with spectacular illustrations by Francis D.K. Ching, who's illustrated many books in design. So Kerry Marshall on our staff learned design from books that were illustrated by Francis D.K. Ching. But better than the illustrations is the narrative, and the narrative was written by Ian, who got like subtitle here. But Ian wrote the text, and Green Building Illustrated is terrific. And then Ian's second book, Energy Audits and Improvements for Commercial Buildings. So again, this is, you know, one of the giants of the New York State building science and engineering, and these books I regard as representing the wisdom of his practice being passed on to future generations. And it really is with great joy that I stop now to introduce Ian Shapiro and ask him to deliver our December Research and Technology Forum. You see the title, Climate Reality plus Emerging Technologies equals Drivers for Building Science Research. Ian Shapiro.
I'm going to float around a little bit. I've been told that I'm going to be on camera. Okay. Thank you so much, Ed. I will say what my father-in-law said at my wedding, which was, this talk is like sex. It gives me great pleasure. He said that at my wedding. But seriously, climate change is having a bigger impact than any of us expected. And I had an experience. My 16-year-old daughter, Noah, is just a wonderful kid. And she's kind of been showing me up. You know, I've been Mr. Green around the house and an environmental advocate. I'm very proud of it. and she is way, way greener than I am. And she has been kind of raising the bar. And I think we're going to see more of this from the next generation. So she came to me about 2 months ago and said, you know, there's Al Gore is giving one of his climate reality workshops, a 3-day workshop in Pittsburgh, free of charge. And I'd like to go, but I can't go because I'm a minor. I need to go with a parent. And so I said, I'll go with you. Now, I did that very same workshop in 2006 when Al Gore first started offering. And so this was also a chance for me to see how that presentation, which is the inconvenient truth presentation, how it's changed over 11 years. And so this is October, this is 2 months ago. And so you go to this presentation for 3 days, and you're trained in how to give his talk, and he gives the training. And he is, you know, he's a real politician. He's a politician's politician. And he is a fabulous speaker, a fabulous speaker. And he not only gives the presentation, he gives tools to guide you, and then he moderates a bunch of sessions. He's up on stage in front of you for almost 3 days straight. And indeed, the presentation has changed over the years. This phenomenal side view of you know, of our atmosphere just emphasizes how thin it is and how very plausible it is for our emissions to be having an effect on our atmosphere. The key component of carbon emissions is the products of combustion. We have others. We have fugitive and any methane leaks have a very big impact. But combustion, and specifically as it affects us in the building field, combustion is what we're talking about. And a dramatic increase in combustion, even, you know, and almost entirely in my lifetime, we're talking the last 50, 60 years, our combustion has gone out of control. The impacts are starting to be, you know, so visible. We're not talking theoretical anymore. We're talking flooding and natural disasters at a level like we have not seen. The explanations are pretty simple. The warming of the air evaporates more moisture from the ocean and contributes to stronger storms. And it also draws more moisture from soil and so contributes to drought. There is a strong association between temperature and fire. We see an increase in the number of fires, and look at the correlation between warm years and incidence of fire. And look at how little of the impact, tiny impact, of the increase in the temperature is contributed to. Weather catastrophes, dramatically, we're talking about a tripling of weather catastrophes. This is in Miami Beach. This is on a sunny day. No storm. This is flooding that has already started in South Florida. You know, we're not talking anymore about a hypothetical 2050, 2100. We're talking about things that are arriving. Top 10 cities at risk from sea level rise. You know, 2 of the top 10, numbers 1 and 3, for assets at risk are in the U.S., Miami and the New York area. We talk about close to home. And this is the Department of Defense's assessment, you know, fairly mainstream, and dramatic. You know, we're starting to link these catastrophes to migration patterns, and then migration patterns that impact on our politics. You know, you could almost make statements that what happened last November, it was a pretty, you know, I'm not going to get into politics, but a pretty dramatic election last November. And you can make the connection between that and immigration. They're not that far-fetched. And the potential for more of it. Imagine if New York City won. What would be the impact on upstate New York? Where are those people going to go? I'll tell you, they're probably not going to go south. Tropical diseases on the move. This is migrations of tropical diseases, including to North America. You know, I've got to ask the migration of the Lion tick in the last 10 years upstate New York. We didn't have it, what, 15 years ago? And now it's a major issue. It certainly is an epic. I don't know if it's serious. And the risk of losing up to 50% of all land-based species. So this is about one. You know, I showed 10 slides. His slide shows 500 slides, and he moves through it in about an hour and a half. He's got a short version, and I excerpted the short version. You know, many of you have heard the stuff, but for me, it was an eye-opener to see it again. And this precious planet of ours really is at risk. So my takeaways. My daughter Noah said, "Come with me." I said, "I'll go along." Well, I came away saying to myself, climate change, unlike 11 years ago, when I saw it through a lens of melting glaciers, that was kind of big. And today I see it differently. I see it much more broadly. An urgent crisis requiring immediate and broad action, including and especially by us. I think there is an important calling and a role for us in the building science and opportunity. And it's changing, and it's changing fast. And I'm going to make a presentation today at what I think some of the building research needs, research and design, whether it's academic, whether it's architects, whether it's engineering, whether it's behavioral science. There is a calling for a broad spectrum of research, and it's different. It's changing fast. That's what I'm going to try and touch on today. I'm going to challenge you a little. I'm going to make some fairly strong statements that I believe about what those changing needs are. But it's intended to stimulate discussion, but I believe it. So, broadly, priorities, scale. We need to scale up, and we need to scale up fast. I feel that the time for kind of modest research where we might say 1 or 2% of the carbon emissions, that's past. We're talking about wanting 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% carbon emissions fast. Urgency, time frame like years and decades, not decades and centuries. Measurable reductions in emissions, like what you could really see on your utility bill, not where it's lost in the noise of your utility bill. With a focus on carbon, and I've been beginning to see that carbon, we think of carbon as kind of synonymous with energy, but it's not. There's some subtle difference. I'm seeing an emerging consensus, okay, that the grid, the electric grid, will become more renewable. It's already, we're lucky. In upstate New York, we're lucky. We've got a lot of hydro from Niagara Falls and from the Sonora Seaway. We've got a growing amount of solar. We've got a little bit of wind starting to happen, and Cormore's talking about a lot more wind off the shore. We're already at about 25%, and the governor's goal is 50% by 2030. That's 13 years away. And he's putting some, some oomph behind that goal. If you've read about what's happening in Europe, Portugal, Denmark, Scotland, many of these countries have dramatically, in the Netherlands, increased the number of wind turbines. You fly over those countries, you can see them. I mean, on thousands of wind turbines. And so this is positive.
Ian,
Yeah.
can we chime in? Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
so on your last slide, you said that it should be carbon, not energy.
Yeah.
Then you have that the grid will become renewable.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of the mind that things that are renewable do not always provide the most carbon emissions. So, any thoughts on that?
Carbon benefits.
Carbon benefits.
Things that are renewable.
You're looking at life cycle then?
No, so if you have $1,000 to spend to save the world, where should you spend it
I
first?
think that's a great question, and I would pose that. It means optimization of the trade-offs between supply and demand. I would pose as a kind of exact research that I think is needed.
Yeah.
I have my concerns about over-reliance on renewables. I have concerns about solar. Very often we install a solar system and then an inverter goes down or and we lose the capacity and we go right back to relying. Yeah, I've got my concerns about renewables. But
So I'd like to cross out the word renewable. I don't like the word renewable. I think it should be carbon reduction.
I may be open to that. I'm not going to advocate purely renewable. But if the grid indeed is already partially renewable, okay, supplied by low carbon emission sources, and if that fraction increases, then anything we do with electricity in our building, as opposed to combustion, will automatically over time get greener and greener. And so, I think there is a growing consensus that we need to electrify. And that means converting combustion to heat pumps, and then as well as smaller energy loads, combustion loads like clothes dryers, stoves, and domestic hot water. Domestic hot water is going to grow as a fraction of our load as we give all of our attention to heating. Domestic hot water is going to be that, what's that game when you're domestic hot water. We will and should improve the building envelopes. So some comments directed to the architects. LED lighting, which has been a fabulous development. So I think that we've done major conversions for like LED lighting and then some control. But this is generally, I think there's something of a consensus in that. Heat pumps. Heat pumps are majorly here and here to stay. This is in Tompkins County. The growth in heat pumps, this was an informal survey we did of contractors. Mostly in new buildings. You've got a challenge in existing buildings, and that challenge is the low cost of natural gas. But in new buildings, I think we did a study for the county, and we're almost at a tipping point. Very close, where the demand in heat pumps has grown so fast and so large that the price of heat pumps has come down, and we are getting about to cross over the price of furnaces, gas furnaces in homes, boilers. And when that happens, forget it. There will be no reason to do combustion. And we're very close in Tompkins County.
So can you just say a word about Tompkins County?
Tompkins County's
Is it reflective of the rest of the state? What's special about Tompkins County?
First of all, we have the lowest unemployment in the state. We've got Cornell University of $3 billion in our economy. It's a relatively wealthy and progressive county, but we often look to it for trim. So very often, NYSERDA takes little things that we've tried in Tompkins County and releases it to state.
So I would say that this is a community that understands climate change and is making decisions.
And we have a very active, it's not only the environmental action, it's our county planning department has just gotten NYSEG to stop a natural gas pipeline. And the PSC has ordered the NYSEG to go ahead. The NYSEG asked to do it. We're not going to put in a new gas pipeline, and we're going to do heat pumps for all of Northeast Tompkins County. So we're a few years, maybe 5 years ahead, but I'm seeing heat pumps going in Syracuse, Rotterdam. It's happening around the state. And this is the kind of hockey stick that you should expect in the next 2 or 3 years. I mean, it's happening. This is just 3 years, okay, compared to each of these 5-year chunks. It's just taken off. And I think you're going to see the same thing happen. No backup electric resistance heat. These are straight air source heat. We're seeing a small number of ground source, primarily predominantly air source heat pumps, both small Mitsubishi units, LG and PGC, and then the larger VRF. We've got a challenge for retrofits. That's where we have a huge challenge, and it's the low price of natural gas that's killing us. So, over in Holland, I visited last summer, and I looked at the Energy Scrum, which means Energy Leap program. And they are retrofitting over 100,000 apartments. I talked about scale. And this is what they're doing. They're recladding them, and they're filling the roof with solar, and then they're putting air to water heat pumps to replace boilers. But they're spending $90,000 per apartment. It just raises the question. I mean, we're getting into the same range as just taking the buildings down and putting up new buildings. In New York State, when I run the numbers on replacing gas boilers and furnaces with heat pumps, I'm coming up with a payback over 50 years. You save a little bit of money, but not a lot. And so this retrofits is a major challenge.
So, the 50-year payback, that's without an envelope retrofit.
Without an envelope, yeah. So it doesn't come down that much with an envelope. Even the envelope retrofits are struggling. Yeah.
I would also, I'm one of the biggest advocates for air source heat pumps, so don't get me wrong when I say this, but my concerns in seeing them go in, particularly with that hockey stick that you just showed us, that type of early adoption, this isn't it's a proven technology for sure, but my concerns are like what we saw in the Jimmy Carter era with rooftop thermal solar, that it's our role, I think, to work with the installers to really know how to commission them properly, know when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate.
And totally, and there will be teething problems, and there already are. I'm getting lots of complaints when I've got a high wall unit, like above a desk, or above a bed, or above a sofa, in cooling. In the summertime, the cold air just falls on the people who are sitting at their desks. We're getting complaints about locations of the units.
The design and manufacturer support.
There's plenty of issues and challenges with heat pumps. I'm not going to get into them. And I'm all for presenting them honestly. And I think we need to present them honestly. But I think it's a done deal. This is going to happen. And I want to present it just in terms of the research need. Given the consensus on electrification and high installation costs, finding ways to reduce install costs is a major priority. And this is a research need. We need to find ways to reduce install costs. We need to optimize the costs, heating versus envelope. What's the right balance? of high efficiency heating versus envelope. We need to optimize renewables or low emissionables, or whatever you want to call
Low carbon.
low carbon. We need to optimize these things. And this is where there's a real role for academics who understand, you know, multiple variables and how to optimize it. We need to reduce installation labor, and I think back to the time and motion studies we did 30 or 40 years ago in industry. We need to find ways and it's very, very feasible. And on the basis of good research, we can develop best practice. We did some of this with deep energy retrofits, where we even looked at the type of tape that's used to tape exterior rigid insulation and how much faster it is to use a tape on an applicator rather than to peel off something. There's a lot to be gained just by looking at the industrial aspect of this work. Well, the best practices, we need to reduce soft costs, design and permitting. NYSERDA has done some very interesting work in this area for solar, trying to reduce those soft costs. But we need to broaden, accelerate demand. When demand goes up, costs come down. It's a perfectly natural economic thing. So acceleration, work in the area of acceleration. COE and Taitem and some others work with an acceleration initiative that NYPA had done. Acceleration is a good concept and it's interesting. We need to do more of it. Okay, now I'm going to switch to envelope. What is the right amount of glaze? We often see some tension between engineers and architects over glazing. Architects in general like glazing. It provides natural light, provides views, and it provides daylighting. And it's attractive from the exterior. There are many good reasons why we like glazing. Glazing also is there are energy penalties with glazing. That those of us who are engineers that have done energy modeling, it jumps out at us. It screams at us. And so it's the people at ASHRAE who have been pushing the limit on glazing as WWR, window to wall ratio. So our new energy code, October 2016, has a limit, 30%. You can't do more than 30% window to wall ratio on commercial buildings. No limit yet for residential. And there are some exceptions. You can tiptoe around that rule if you use some exceptions. No limit for residential. I did a survey of high performance buildings in the Ithaca area, net zero buildings, LEED platinum buildings, buildings that were really fabulous buildings. And every single one had a window to wall ratio of less than 20%. I did a survey of non-high performance buildings in the Ithaca area, ones that just went and complied with the energy code. They're not LEED, they're nothing special. All of them have a window to wall ratio over 30%. Most of them started and designed before the new energy code. So this issue of how much glazing is a major issue, and I want to deal with it kind of step by step. I first want to talk about daylight. So this is a graph that's kind of excerpted from my first book. But when we add glazing to a building, if a building doesn't have any windows, there's no savings from daylight, right? So as we start to add windows, we see good savings, good daylight. And as we add more and more windows, we reach a point at which there are no added savings. We've done as much daylighting as we can. So that's what happens with the energy savings with daylight. Window thermal losses, they kind of work against you, and they keep growing, and they grow, and they grow, and they grow. And you want to add, well, the good thing is that the daylighting savings in like office buildings, the savings are greater The slope of this line is greater than the slope of this line, so you want to add those two, right? And if you add the two, you see there are net savings, but the net savings start to go away as you keep adding glazing. And there is an optimum. And I have done a lot of literature searches, and the best paper I can find on this is like 1981. And back then we were talking about incandescent lighting and a little bit of fluorescent light. And things have changed. How have they changed? Well, with lighting has become more and more efficient. And as lighting becomes more efficient, this line starts to come down. And your savings start to come down. And I don't know what that optimum is. I have a guess it's below 10% window to wall. It's small. For some buildings, like homes, residential buildings, where lighting, on average, is only on for 2 or 3 hours a day, this never goes positive. There is no benefit to daylight. Yes?
There's no energy benefit.
No energy benefit to daylight.
So you're going to talk about views?
I'm going to talk about views next.
Okay.
Okay. I'm trying to be methodical, but I'm also wanting to be honest. That energy savings from daylighting is going down fast as LED lighting and as the controls that come with LED lighting reduce the electricity usage of artificial lighting. We're moving towards no benefit to daylight. And if there is, it's small and it requires very small amount of light. Much less than we currently do. Okay, now let's talk about view. If small glazing required for daylight, what's needed for view? The well standard is some kind of a wellness health standard. It's not one I'm familiar with, but I did look at its requirement. It has a 20% minimum window to wall ratio in regularly occupied spaces required for acceptable view. Minimum of 20%. BREEAM, the same. BREEAM is the same. LEED, I don't think has a requirement.
Well, it's not required. You can get a point.
You can get a point for views, but there's no minimum window to wall. Do we really know? I have to say, I think that this 20%, I'm guessing somebody pulled it from a hat. So I would really like to encourage us to be asking questions. In your beautiful Brooklyn brownstone row houses, I guarantee you window to wall ratio is like well below 10%. You've got a facade, and then all of those interior spaces are party wall. And I think we have too much light at 30%, and certainly if we use the little exceptions we can, and in residential buildings, 30, 40, 50%. It's way too much for daylighting, and I would argue it's way too much for view. And it's only needed in regularly occupied space. We don't need glazing, in my mind, in stairwells in which people spend. We've got data. We've got very good data. We're talking single minutes a day occupancy. We don't need them in mechanical rooms. We don't need them in electrical rooms. I would say we don't need them in corridors. So I think there is a real place for us to be looking honestly and seriously at glazing without, I'm not talking windowless buildings. I want views, I want natural daylight. I'm just asking us to find out what the right number is, because glazing is killing. Even triple glazing is killing. More envelope research. Interior wall insulation as a retrofit, I think, would be very helpful. We don't do it. We don't do it because we're worried about condensation, and we don't do it because we're worried about thermal pollution. But the bottom line is it's really hard and it's really expensive to insulate the exterior of buildings. It's really, really hard. It's really expensive. And so I think interior insulation retrofits that are robust and don't introduce moisture issues is a real need. We need better infiltration improvement model. The blower door was the best thing that happened to, especially to homes, but it's just building science. Blower doors just taught us a ton. And we're not there yet with knowing exactly where to air seal, how much to air seal, what the best way to air seal, how do you what's the best way to air seal an abandoned chimney, an abandoned stack. I believe that the answer is you've got to seal the top and the bottom, otherwise you still have a driving force. So, but there's questions, and we need models. You know, a lot of people in academia are good with models. They're much better than us who are in the building design field. We need those people who are good at models. Rapid and accurate stack effect improvement models. We're only beginning to understand stack effect. I did a project, this is my house. I did a project, this is in home energy 2 or 3 months ago, where we looked at stack effect. And stack effect is much more than hot air rising. The big finding we found was that stack effect is as much cold air falling. And if you stand in an open stairwell and you put a wet hand near the ceiling, you will feel the warm air rising. And if you put your wet hand near the floor, you will feel the cold air falling. And I believe this starts to explain why upper stories of buildings are way overheated. It's not just warm air rising, it's cold air falling. And we need much more. I mean, my takeaway from this project is we need to understand more. We just don't understand enough about this. Outdoor lighting, the energy code allows photocell control, and this is how we typically do it. We turn the lights off during the day, we turn them on at night, they're on dusk to dawn. You know, a timer might be used to shut it off at midnight, so then we might save a few hours. But really, the right way to go with outside lighting, almost all outside lighting, is motion sensor control, where it's on for minutes a night rather than hours. And repeatedly, what we're presented with is people who say, this is bad for security. And there's an international organization, the International Dark Sky. They say that it's safer to have motion control, because then when an intruder comes into the area of a building, the lights come on and they're scared away. The bottom line is, I don't think we know. There is a need for research on this stuff to see whether motion sensor control would is safe. If it is safe, I can tell you right now, we'll save 90 to 99% of our outside lighting. We will put it all on motion. But there's a need for interdisciplinary research. And we have to move beyond kind of just speculating. Plug loads. Growth. Plug loads are growing. And I see it in our energy project. We measure the results of energy savings on many projects. We do this for NYSERDA. And we have seen us repeatedly meeting our goals for combustion gas savings, or for fossil fuel savings, and we often don't meet our goals on electric. And one of the speculations is that we're saving energy with our lighting improvement, and we're losing it because plug loads keep growing. Plug loads are largely not addressed by the building energy codes. The new energy code has a little bit of something about so many percentages of the plugs need to be controllable or something. But we need to know more. What works in the area of plug loads, great area of research, and the behavior. How can we tell people to turn things off? And is there anything more we can put in the energy code? Because our building designs just, there's limited things that we currently do. Electrification, I think over time, you know, space heating is going to go to heat pumps. We're left with industrial processes, oven, drying, many of which are fossil fuel driven, and we need electric substitutes, efficient electric substitutes for those. Heat pumps I've already mentioned for space heating, hot water, I'll talk about in a minute, and then smaller loads. And then there's, as we electrify, as we remove fossil fuel loads and build up our electric loads, the grid is going to need to accommodate those changes. Domestic hot water, I mentioned that the hot water loads are growing. And I can, you know, I've been doing this work for 30 years, and if you ask me today, what should I put in my net zero house, I honestly cannot tell you what the best thing to put in there is for a water heater. I just don't know. Hugh has done some fabulous research in this area. We've got heat pumps. I threw a heat pump in my basement. I'm very happy with it. But my basement has a boiler, you know, so it's kind of using some of the heat from the boiler. There's a move towards not using basements in high performance buildings, and then a heat pump, a packaged heat pump like this one, doesn't make as much sense. You can't put it in a closet. So then, you know, maybe it should be a split system. Well, the best, lowest cost split system heat pump these days, like $3,000 or $5,000. We've got challenges here with heat pump water heaters. Maybe we just go back to electric resistance water heaters. I have questions about central versus point of use, and I'll be honest, when people come to me, I just, you know, I tell them I prefer electric. We've got a basement to heat pump. I'm still struggling with this, even after I've read it.
Yeah, well, so a heat pump water heater makes sense in a bad basement, but if you have a good basement, it no longer makes sense.
How can we reduce losses? How can we reduce flows, point of use? We've got faucet aerators. They're no longer aerators. They're kind of needle flow. They're down at 0.35 GPM. We did a study in our office. They remove soap from your hand as fast as 1 or 2 GPM. They work just as well. They're not good in a kitchen where you're needing to rinse food off of plates. So, okay for bathrooms, not as okay for kitchens. How can we reduce flows? How can we reduce flow duration? You know, domestic hot water loads is not only the flow, it's how long the flow lasts. Heat pump efficiency. I spent the last 6 months. I wrote a report for Tompkins County that said that in certain situations, ductless heat pumps use the same amount of energy as ground source. Well, New York Geo came after me like tar and feather. I wrote a report based on my model that said that ductless heat pumps in a situation where you don't have distribution losses and you've got better temperature control are as good as ground source heat pumps that are ducted and have duct losses and that don't have as good temperature control. They usually are just one thermostat. Well, they came after me and they said, no, you know, we air source heat pumps stink. So I spent literally several months. We did a literature survey. Hugh Henderson pops up. Hugh pops up over and over. So Hugh did a study.
Like whack-a-mole.
Like whack-a-mole.
He keeps popping up. You know, he did a study of 2 high-performance buildings or 3 in this area, and found that indeed their air source efficiency is very low. I came up with this list, I don't know, eight of them, all of which I felt are fairly good. It's hard to measure the efficiency of a heat pump. It's really hard, especially if it's variable speed.
And so they're probably different climates, right? Because Ecotope is Washington, probably.
This was Northwest, yeah. But most of them were Northeast. Bohack, I think is Midwest, upper Midwest. Yeah. So, heat pumps, air source heat pumps really should be delivering an annual average of about 3. They really should be by their rate. And I went back to the New York Geo people and I said, I think you are at least partially right. Heat pumps today are not meeting their rated efficiency. And so now I am derating heat pumps by 10 to 15% in my model because I don't think we're there yet. And I think the issue is generally it's we need best practice. If they're designed and installed well, I think we will deliver an annual average COP of 3. So we're not there.
And just for perspective, so I just got done looking at 50 water or geothermal systems, and it was 3.6 was the average.
So I changed my report. And I said that as of today, ground source heat pumps are still more efficient than air source heat pumps. And this is where I'm at today. So we need best practices to get to the rated efficiency. We need higher efficiency in general. We need more efficient product. We need to do some work on setback. There is a almost universal consensus in this country that you cannot lower the temperature of heat pumps because recovering from setback, they operate inefficiently, and the current view is that we cannot set back the heat. If we could, the savings would be huge because heat pumps are thermodynamic devices, and at a lower indoor temperature, they operate much more efficient. So we really need to try and address this in research. What is the issue? Why are they struggling? If we can solve this problem, we're going to boost their efficiency by 20%. We need to reduce the install cost. This is already coming down in new construction. We need to reduce the install costs for veterans. And we need more data on the larger VRF heat pumps versus the smaller ones. I've got some preliminary data that I shared with Stephen Winter Associates. They presented down in New York City a few weeks ago. Our preliminary findings, we're talking 2 or 3 buildings. Says that smaller air source heat pumps use less energy than larger VRF systems. I don't know why. We don't have a lot of data on these larger VRF systems.
So it's field data, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is black box, how much the building is used, but similar buildings, multifamily buildings. Small sample, but there is a possibility that large VRF systems. So I am starting to tell people for multifamily, put in small heat pumps. Don't put in large central VRF. So we need more data.
So we're actually testing a 6-ton with 2 heads these days.
VRF or
a VRM.
Great. I'll be very interested to share. We need more data on VRF. We need more data on VRF.
And I think one thing that might be happening is the part load benefits you're supposed to get, we're having trouble seeing those.
Yeah. They're big systems. They're complicated systems. Their rated efficiencies are slightly lower than smaller air source heat. Now we're talking about the grid. I often get asked if we start converting all this combustion stuff to heat pumps, are we not going to blow up the grid? Currently, we are a summer peaking state. New York State, this is the New York ISO. We peak at about 4 p.m. on a summer day. And look at this, the winter. Where are we going to put the heat pump load? Well, it's going to show up in the middle of the night, in fact, early morning in the winter, because that's when our heating loads are great. So if we throw a bunch of heat pumps, they're going to add load right here. It's just filling in the trough. In the short term, there's no problem converting fossil fuels to heat pumps. Now, if we go ahead and convert our whole building stock, I was in New York City last week. They are talking about trying to convert New York City from fossil fuels to heat pumps. I mean, that's how bold their vision. And if we convert all of our buildings from fossil fuels to heat pumps, we're going to become winter heat. So there's not a short-term problem. In fact, short-term it's good. We're going to fill in this trough, and our efficient heat pump cooling is going to reduce this one. It's great. In the short-term, no problem. Long-term, we've got to shift from summer to winter, and then we need more wind and hydro, which will do that nighttime winter stuff, because the solar is great for the summer daytime. Policy. I want us to not limit ourselves to technology. We have to step out of our comfort zone, even the engineers among us, and we need to get involved in policy discussion. I'm writing a green building policy for the city of Ithaca right now. We're going to present about it at the Green Building Conference. Something that might tiptoe us as a requirement toward net zero. So how do we continue improving the energy code? What is the limit? How far can we go? Are we talking net zero? How do we handle renewables? All of these are questions I'm struggling with for the city of Ithaca. The state of California is talking about requiring residential buildings net zero by 2020. That's 3 years from now. And commercial buildings by 2030. But we're not that sure how we're going to do it. I just took a look at the proposals for the 2018 energy code, and with all of the tremendous need that we have to reduce energy use, it's not much better than 2015. So there's an issue of hitting the wall. How do we avoid hitting the wall? At a certain point, there are people pushing back saying, we're not going to do that, we're not going to do that. And so how do we reduce energy use while keeping building construction affordable? There are actually ways in which you can reduce carbon emissions affordably. How do we ensure compliance if our energy code, which just got much tougher, how do we make sure that building officials enforce it? And then how do we promote better than code policy? Better than code would be LEED, passive house, what we're talking about with our city. How do we do better than code? There's a stretch energy code that is about to be released, fully developed. NYSERDA developed it with New Building Institute. Check for something, how much I do for time?
It's 422.
422. So better than code, we've got a stretch code that's going to be released very shortly for adoption by local municipalities. We might look at it at the city of Ithaca. And they're already at work on the next stretch code, which will be released right after the 2018 energy code. Energy portfolio programs. What do I mean by that? Any energy program that promotes energy efficiency is what I call a portfolio program. All of NYSERDA's programs, all of their incentives, those are portfolio programs. NYPA's program, the Federal Weatherization Assistance Program, which is in every single one of our cities doing low-income weatherization. All of these are portfolio programs. The federal tax credits for solar, all of these are programs to promote energy conservation. I'm guessing there's over 1,000 of these nationally. This is how we save energy in this country. It's through these programs. Utility programs, like NYSERDA programs. And I want to suggest that we really don't understand what works and doesn't work with these programs. We need harmonization and standards applied to these programs. Typically, what I see is, I'm not going to name it. One of these organizations hires a new program manager, and they're a few years out of college, and they're very enthusiastic, and they think, I've got a great new idea. I'm going to give a $20 rebate, if people don't take showers for a week. And you send in your form, and it's like a treadmill of creativity with very little evaluation. They claim they evaluate these programs. I have read the evaluation report. It's very difficult to evaluate the savings on a utility program that hands out a light bulb. Short of going to see whether the light bulb was installed or not, you know nothing about the hours of operation of the light bulb. You have as much information as an energy company, mostly speculation. Some of our programs, we do slightly better measurement and verification. Again, Hugh does some, we do some. The best measurement and verification is to have programs that achieve heat savings that show up on the utility bill. Short of that, I think it's a lot of handling. We don't know a lot about what works, what doesn't. I know it, you know, any NYSERDA people.
No, we're watching on the webinar.
I'll wait. You know, there are fabulous clients about it, but I see adjustments to incentives in certain programs that kill the program. The program grinds to a halt because they lower the incentive. That tells me that we don't know what works on the program. We need study of these programs and better studies than the evaluations that are traditionally done. I read these evaluation reports. They are not rigorous. They're not scientifically based. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say measurement and verification is sometimes called M&V.
Yeah.
And in evaluation programs, they sometimes forget the M.
Yeah.
Just to be.
To the B, you know. I'm not trying to be hard on anybody. We all struggle with this stuff. This is true of the utilities, true of NYSERDA, true of NYPA. All of these programs, I see the same thing, but we need harmonization. We need to know what works. Yes, Jake.
So there's a big push now to pay for performance.
Right.
As to address the issues you're raising. And the E meter is a way to get real time.
I think we are tiptoeing in the right direction. If we can in fact measure, but there's many things you can't measure. It's very hard to measure the energy improvement on an envelope set. Short of looking at the utility bills, there's nothing I can measure. Ron here has a fabulous invention for a window improvement. I cannot measure the improvement of that device other than in a lab, or if the impact on my utility bills are big enough, I might see it there. It's this hard stuff. I'm not faulting anybody, but it's very hard stuff, and all I'm saying is there's a need for more research on the programs, not only on the technologies, on the program.
So wait.
Yeah.
Go back.
Yeah.
The second bullet. So a well-known landmark building. So
Okay.
this is the first I've heard, but saves less than 10%.
Well, New York has a fantastic local law 84 that requires buildings to show what their energy saves. And there is a well-known New York City building that is very tall. And that
Gorilla would be there.
that made major news, and I take my hat off to that building owner. He is really committed to energy saving. I'm not gonna, you know, I haven't done enough work on it. I was curious. I saw newspaper front page, front page of the New York Times. We are going to save 38%. Then I started hearing we saved 38%. I said, that's strange. That's what they said they were going to save. And so I said, I've got local law 84. I'll go check what the savings are. And what I'm seeing is like 6 to 8% savings.
So
You know it, though.
yeah, I do. So I'm just gonna wonder that building before renovation had a certain quality of space and a certain type of tenant. And after renovation, it became actually like a boutique place. You know, there were new tenants and new fit outs, and rents went up.
Very
So I wonder if it's essentially plug loads, like you know, or servers or something.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like they, you know, it's again, it's
totally,
like before and after different uses.
Totally possible.
It's just a guess.
I also know, you know, my company has looked at hundreds of before and after, and we have buildings that save. Okay, I mean, the owner invested $500,000 and they didn't save anything. And we've got buildings that save 30%. And we need to better understand what really delivers energy. I don't want to get these guys in trouble. I want to go on real fast. When is the optimum withdrawal of incentives to ensure that market transformation happens? Does market transformation really happen? And again, you know, my observation is sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. Should incentives ever totally be withdrawn? I take the fairly strong position that as long as we are facing a dire, you know, global crisis, we should not be withdrawing incentives. This should be a major priority for a few reasons. A, to help building owners do it. B, to make sure that some building owners who are, you know, who don't care, that they're more likely to do it. C, to enforce some level of quality control. And I don't have it up here. Oh, incentives ensuring quality of new technology. Solar has been a phenomenal success in this state because the quality of installations has generally been good, because NYSERDA has given incentives and has had inspections of many, if not most, of the installations. So we don't have bottom feeders coming in and doing what happened with solar thermal in the early 80s, you know, where we had poor quality and 9 out of 10 systems failed. That has not happened. Solar has been a fabulous success because of the quality. Why did we have quality? We have quality because there was quality control that came with the incentive. So I'm a big believer in incentives, not only to help people make it happen, but to make sure that it happens well. So I'm against withdrawing incentives. I think it's a fantasy, and I think it's we shouldn't be doing it. Effectiveness of different program models. We've got all kinds of different models, again, different portfolio programs. We need to know really what works and what doesn't work, and I don't think we have a good handle on that yet. Even more, what motivates owners? How can owners be motivated if savings are low or non-existent? With the low price of natural gas, you know, nothing's going to happen. So how do we move the needle? We have to do it. If this was, you know, asbestos causing cancer in every single one of these buildings, we would do it, even though there's no payback. We need it, and it's almost like a curse if there's any payback at all, because we need to do this work, even though there are not savings, and we need to abandon a model that says we will only do work if there's savings or if there's a payback. Unfortunately, the demand for natural gas is only going to go down, and that means that the price is going to keep going down. Is there a broken window of theory of energy improvement? Anyone heard of the broken window theory? You know, in poor neighborhoods, if there's broken windows, then people are less likely to maintain them. Should we be taking care of minor things like lights left on during the day, in the hope that it motivates people to do deeper work? There's there's so much research that needs to be done, and a lot of it's technical, and a lot of it is in the social sciences. But we're the ones who know about it. So we need to tell the social scientists what our needs are. Areas of lower priority. Here I'm going to challenge you all a little bit. I think that demonstrations are and should be a lower priority. In my company, I have done 20, 30, 40 demonstrations in my career, more. I mean, it's been a major area of work, and I think it's often good, but a typical demonstration takes 4 to 8 years. You know, I don't think I'm being slow. It takes time to develop a concept. It takes time to find sites. It takes time to sign contracts. As often as not, sites that we have found have fallen through, and we had to find other sites. It takes another year. It takes time to design. It takes time to install, and then it takes 1 to 2 years to evaluate. I have rarely done a demonstration project that has not taken 4 years, and often taken 6 to 8. Okay? I'm just not sure we've got the time to be doing it. We need to be moving to scale. We know what works. Heat pumps work, on-flow improvements work, LED lighting works. We know what it takes to take the building to net zero. We need to make it more affordable, and we need to scale up fast. So I'm working with many of you on demonstrations. I'm going to continue doing demonstrations. But I also, I'll be honest, I think that we need to be moving a little fast. Combustion research. You know, we've got combustion manufacturers right here in the Syracuse area. I've spent a major portion of my career doing combustion design. I pushed natural gas as a clean technology for years and decades. I also think that we are reaching the end of fossil fuel combustion. Heat pumps are going to become cheaper soon, and people are going to stop putting in fossil fuel, and we need to take it out of our buildings. So we're talking now in Ithaca about the gas pipeline being a stranded asset. And I would say that combustion research may end up being a stranded asset. We're not going to use it. Combined heat and power, still fossil fuel. And, you know, it's been a good thing. It does reduce energy use
And carbon emissions.
It does reduce carbon emissions. Still relying on fossil fuels. And I'm throwing out where I am. This is what I'm going to make my decisions as to where I'm going to direct my energy. New product development. I think Ed has heard me say this too many times. I think our research and development, whether it's state funded, university funded, federally funded, has kind of focused too much energy on new product development. We're kind of hoping that there's a widget that'll come along that will solve all of our problems. And new product development is a long shot. You know, 1 out of 100 maybe work. And the life cycle to develop a new product, these heat pumps that we're starting to use now, they've been around for about 30 years. The life cycle, we're talking 10, 20 years to really develop something and get it out there. With some exceptions. Ron has a brilliant interior storm window that is affordable. You know, I have to think there's a place for new products, especially when they reduce construction costs. That's where our real need is now. We know how to get there, but we need to reduce construction costs. So you've got a widget that is affordable. That is one of our biggest needs, is affordability. Research on the margins, small energy savings. I'll give an example. This was a project we did for the COE Innovation Fund. We looked at steam losses. We came up with our best guess of why steam heating systems are so inefficient. And there's multiple different reasons. And we assign a percentage to each one of these different things. I see a lot of people doing work in individual areas here. Stephen Winter has a great project, and for fixed orifice steam traps. Building overheating, there's a radiator lab, has a cover for radiators that's thermostatically controlled. We see a lot of people doing work in one of these areas, and so that's what you're going to say. You're going to say 8% if you put those radiator lab products. And I would argue that what we're needing to reduce carbon emissions by 50, 60, 70%. We're not going to do it with these individual things. I've been advocating just putting heat pumps. We will immediately eliminate all of these losses and gain some other efficiency. So I'm looking for bolder, more comprehensive, more holistic improvement rather than working in the margin. In closing, the stakes are high. Opportunities are many. There's plenty of work out there for all of us. But scale is really important. Moving to scale, and we need to invest in our brightest. My daughter is one of our best and brightest. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ian. You turn up the lights and let's take questions. So Ken.
Hi. With regard to solar PV, what's your take on the status of battery research and storage?
I think it's happening. It's not something I'm very familiar with. I'm hopefully about to do a project in that area for a heat pump manufacturer, wanting to look at batteries. I would never have thought batteries would be an answer to anything. And then the Toyota Prius came along, and I was blown away. I've got a Prius 8 years, and I haven't had to change the battery. You know, I think battery technology is changing fast. And there's a second emerging demand for them that not only the grid, and that is resilience. I mean, people are starting to say that these big storms are going to come through. I've got a screen capture of Hurricane Sandy, and its projected path where the eye was projected to go through it. And that was before it landed in New Jersey.
My mother's house.
So it missed us. But there's a chance. We see these microburst storms all summer long. You know, I'm starting to worry about resilience in my house. I never thought I would have had to worry about it. So I think there's a possible demand in resilience, and then I think it would serve a real function to deal with the winter peak. So I think batteries are coming.
Ron, lots of questions. Lots of time.
First, a facetious question. Is somebody taping this so we have a commercial for Wix Energy?
Yeah.
No, seriously, first, thank you very much for the kind words. You mentioned the stack effect and the need for modeling. When you're retrofitting, and if you have to make choices between efficiency at upper levels versus lower levels, is there information about what ought to be done first?
The general consensus is attic floor. It doesn't matter. Top and bottom is your biggest bang for the buck, because that's where your pressure differences are biggest. Top and bottom. So attic floor for sure, basement, for sure, and then to a lesser degree what happens in between. Yeah.
So just for folks who are listening on the web, we're monitoring the chat box. So if you have questions, feel free to enter them in the chat, and we will bring them into the room.
Yeah, so my understanding is that the focus on energy in New York State has gone toward renewables, heavily toward renewables, and less toward efficiency. So the example is the NYSERDA residential. My background is in residential retrofit. They are basically eliminating all the incentives for the residential, for the market-based residential retrofit program.
And I think it's a mistake.
And right, and I don't know their decision-making process, but I do know that I'm retired now, but when I was involved in the communication on a regular basis with NYSERDA, they were getting 70% realization rates on their, M&B, and they weren't happy with that. And
well, in the multifamily programs at NYSERDA, realization rates over 90%. Great quality control. Generally, incentives have been good, although they're now not available for market rate buildings, only for low income. We can hit the realization rates of over 90% for good quality work. The thing about solar is that it's predictable. You put in 5 kW and it's predicted to deliver 5,500 kWh, and you hit it within a few percent.
I'm sorry, but my concern is that because of the, what's the word? Because solar has such sort of like a cachet and sex appeal that it essentially will replace efficiency
and I think
and drive efficiency away.
I think that would be a mistake.
They've done enough if they put panels on their roofs.
I think that would be a mistake. I think that we need to do both. The solar, which I'm a big believer in my company, is strong, but I worry about its robustness. That system is going to last 20 years, 30 years. At a certain point, an inverter fails. Does the homeowner, when it's out of warranty, replace it? Because they can just keep buying, from National Grid. So I think there's actually a need to understand the dynamics of solar in terms of long-term robustness. And I think it's a mistake to over rely on it. I like Architecture 2030 that says, you know, we want you to reduce your energy by 80% and we'll allow you 20% with low carbon. Low carbon distributed demand. Am I getting the words right?
Yeah. Well, and so, you know, so your point, so NYSERDA has heat pump programs now, but they're under renewable heating and cooling. So again, the word renewable
has a,
everyone wants that stamped on their forehead.
everyone wants it, and it's, I've for years, I've said it's ridiculous to be calling ground source heat pumps renewable.
But it makes everybody want one.
Everybody wants one. So now, I don't like it. But I take my hat off to Governor Cuomo. I think his rollout of incentives for air source heat pumps was great. Even though it's only $500 per system, that's measurable. And the intention, which is to electrify, is right on. I'm delighted. I think, you know, there's a lot of good things happening. If we see the utilities all around us, I'm hearing the utilities thinking about rolling out heat pump incentives. If we get something from the utilities and something from NYSERDA, we're starting to patch together a meaningful set of incentives. So,
given how dire the situation is and the relative, well, the role of incentives, do you see anywhere down the road where legislation may become a factor in terms of?
I think we need a carbon tax. I think there's no way we're going to do what needs to be done. In Europe, they're paying $2 to $3 a therm for gas. We're paying 50 cents, 60 cents a therm. We need a carbon tax. And I think people like us need to not be shy. You know, us engineers, we tend to be kind of shy. We need to be loud. There's no way we can drive this work in retrofits. We can do it in new construction. In retrofits, forget about it. We need money to pay for this stuff, and I think the answer is a carbon tax. Yeah.
In New York City, efficiency was, at the beginning of this century, efficiency was clearly being driven by the mayor and by the cost of fossil fuels. Bloomberg was stronger than de Blasio is, but de Blasio is following on. But the cost of fossil fuels, natural gas, as you said many times today, has, you know, dropped considerably. And the drive for efficiency had to be incorporated into city ordinances because it had stopped moving.
I'm working with the Green Building Policy City of Ithaca. My conclusion, we looked at all kinds of options. One option is incentive. One option is training, you know, workforce development. One option is code, requirement. And I came to the conclusion the only way, if they really want to reduce carbon emissions, the only way to do it effectively is with a more stringent energy. So what we're working on is something that focuses on carbon, not on energy, on carbon. And we're thinking of a point system that gives credits for if you're developing an urban area, less transportation. So carbon-based, I lost my train of thought.
Policy as a driver.
Policy, but not hesitating to mandate stuff. You know, we're facing a major environmental crisis. If this was asbestos or something causing our children to cough up blood, we would be doing it without a payback. And that is the magnitude of this issue. I think it's urgent. And like I said, it's almost a curse that energy saves money, that energy costs money, and that there's paybacks and stuff. If we didn't have to be justifying stuff with payback and benefit cost analysis, we would just keep doing it because it's urgent to do it.
So this gets to what we consider to be a benefit. And this is where he was talking about the daylight savings in energy. And whether there are what's called co-benefits, and co-benefits to the occupant or the plant, and how to value those co-benefits.
For sure. And I'm not, you want me to come back into daylight?
Not necessarily. I'm just about, if you focus on it, if the conversation is only about energy, it's not a bigger conversation, and then you're boxed in.
And the benefit to the planet is big if we reduce our carbon emissions, and so we should be paying for it. But people are not likely to pay automatically, so we need a carbon tax. It's that simple. Ken?
I'd like to follow up on that, because I was thinking of even mentioning this too. It's a great presentation, but when you said corridors and stairwells didn't have windows, we have a beautiful building at OCC. It's 300 feet long. It has double-loaded corridor. But every once in a while, the architects who designed it have a window every so often that comes into the corridor. The tremendous benefit is that you know where you are in the building. You know you are in the corridor. You just can see out. And then the stairwell as well. We have gorgeous glazing in the stairwell, probably way over, but that's often a non-conditional state or a semi-conditional.
It's definitely not regularly occupied, so the green building standards would not require a view. I think that there's a benefit being able to see what the weather is outdoors, And I am not an architect. I am an engineer, and I feel I have a responsibility to tell the architects how badly glazing is hurting us. And when the response is, well, we use it for daylighting, I want to tell you honestly, with the advent of LED lighting, that argument ain't there anymore. If you want to talk about view, I'll talk about you. And ultimately, it's you who will make the decisions. It's not us. But I'll tell you a situation I've been in multiple times in Ithaca. Somebody comes to me with a design, and they say, I'd like to make this more energy efficient. And I tell them, I think you've got too much glazing. And their response is, I already have planning board approval. I can't change it. That's happened multiple times. From an engineering point of view, glazing is killing us. And so I'm just asking the question. I think the 20% minimum, I'm guessing somebody pulled it from the hat. I like views from my living room window. I like a generous living room window. I myself, I'm not sure. I need 3 windows in my bedroom. That's the questions I'm asking. And ultimately, it won't be me that answers it. It'll be the architect and the building. And I have to tell you how badly glazing is hurting, even triple glazing. And certain buildings, buildings that are still 100% glazed, killing us.
What question?
Kevin?
About orientation for glazing passive solar terms.
Yeah, they're there, but they're modest, and it needs to be optimized. It needs to be run through a computer simulation. Mark will do it for you. Well, too much glazing will hold.
Computer model, the benefits of the passive solar.
It's not really hard. Almost all of us can run those models. They're not that hard to run. And too much glazing will overheat a building, make it way too uncomfortable, and at nighttime the losses are huge. There is a benefit to some modest south-facing glazing. If you didn't run it through a computer program, you didn't optimize.
I ran it through Ed Masley's book.
We ran it through Ed's book.
Yeah.
Ed is a god. I worship Ed.
I was going to say to that point, so 30 or 40 years ago, Doug Balcom wrote a book about passive solar. And this is when I really started to be a pessimist, because I went through and I looked at the optimal mix of conservation and solar. And I got the book and I looked up Syracuse and I calculated the window to wall ratio, and it was like every house around me. So the optimal mix of solar and passive wasn't too far, and this has totally changed, but 30 years ago, the optimal mix of solar and conservation, or passive solar conservation, was what every house was at that moment. That's
not the case today. There's been a huge trend to increase glazing.
Yep.
And I can tell you multiple buildings at Cornell that have won prizes.
Well, those are commercial.
One prize is large, and then the facilities people are complaining to me that they're uncomfortable as hell because there's way too much solar gain, and the air conditioning can't keep up. And then there's drafts. In the winter, there's drafts that are not physical drafts, they're just thermocycling drafts, cold air falling down, and people's feet are cold. So you have to do passive solar carefully. And it's primarily south facing. You're not talking north facing. In the east and west, there's some complicated trails. Right.
So you just mentioned the convection, the draft.
Yeah.
Has that been quantified in terms of?
And I've taken measurements in buildings with full height glass. You're talking 10-degree difference between people having feet. I've dealt with complaints. People are freezing. Their feet are freezing because of the thermocycle. You can measure it with a infrared thermometer, measure temperature profile. You shouldn't have more than about 5 degrees between head and feet. And if it's more,
is that only happening with full height?
no, the bigger the window, the bigger the problem.
Doesn't radiative transfer
Also, hurts you.
actually more than thermocycling?
Yeah. Your body losing heat by radiation through the windows to a dark night sky can be very uncomfortable as well. Again, it's not my area. And
That just reminds me of around the time of Nasri's book, there was another book called Movable Insulation. Really terrific, and it describes different ways to then modulate the amount of curtain and insulated curtains and that.
That should be the ideal. That should be the ideal. I would love to have good, preferably automatic, movable insulation. But we dabbled in it and then it went away. That would be great. The inventor down in Ithaca at Eco Village, who developed a movable insulation that was on the outside and then some pulleys.
What are your thoughts about small-scale heating systems on biomass?
Biomass is very interesting. I've got a wood stove that I like and that I use. As you know, I've been told that wood is carbon neutral. There are some people who say, well, it takes time to reforest. I've heard people, a very, very well-intentioned landlord down in Ithaca has tried a few pellet boilers and has said it's prevented more problems than he likes, so now he's going to go flashing pumps. It's complicated. We put in a big biomass boiler at the Cayuga Nature Center. We put one in the Danby Town Hall. Both of them struggled. There was
Reliability issues?
There was ice. The feedstock in winter was wet and then iced up. At one site. And the Danby Town Hall has gotten rid of it.
And both these were pellets. These were high quality pellets.
No, wood chips.
The chips, okay.
One of them. It's tough. We're in the first few years of biomass. Most of them are imported. I'm not there yet.
And the only ones that get incentives are the pellet boilers, all that gets incentives.
I think it's worth doing research. I'm not there yet myself. I tend to be fairly conservative. I don't like to do stuff that's not been out for a few years, except for Ron's windows. I love Ron's windows. I put Ron's windows throughout a building that I own now. That's a problem. And I will have results within a month or two. Whole building results. It's a simple interior scrolling window. Fast into the glazing, affordable, very creative.
With that, I want to thank Ian. Thank you all. Our monthly program of research and technology forums is brought to you by our partner program. If you're Partner Program. I invite you to talk to us about it. I also want to take this opportunity to introduce Laurel Wilson, who's here in the back. Laurel's the newest staff member at Syracuse COE. Laurel joined us on our staff upstairs as an office coordinator. She's in the position that was previously held by Stacy Bunce. So one of the roles that Laurel has is if anybody needs to use our space, Laurel's now our point person. But welcome, Laurel, and wish you all happy holidays. We should have outside refreshments, and there are. So so come and join us for refreshments and networking. I want to thank staff and Carrie for their work on the forum, and wish everyone happy holidays. Thanks.